The prospect of Red Bull bringing IndyCar race winner Colton Herta into Formula 1 makes for one of the most interesting rookie possibilities since Max Verstappen. No F1 debutant is a guaranteed hit, but with Herta you can make about as compelling a case that he could be a brilliant rookie as you can that his switch is doomed to fail. Herta has been lined up by Red Bull to replace Alpine-bound Pierre Gasly at AlphaTauri, the latest move in a fascinating and volatile period for F1's driver market. The American driver represents a bigger gamble than teams normally take, including the Red Bull ones. So what's the thinking behind it, and is it a sure thing? The main reason Red Bull wants Herta is that he is likely to have a seat that needs filling at AlphaTauri. Even though it was publicly announced that Gasly would remain with AlphaTauri in 2023 earlier this year, he's believed to be Alpine's preferred choice to fill a vacancy left by two shock moves: Fernando Alonso's switch to Aston Martin and Oscar Piastri's departure to McLaren. The desired alternative is Herta, subject to being granted a super license, which we'll come to a bit later in this video. So why an American from IndyCar rather than someone within Red Bull's own driver pool or another recruit from elsewhere on the F1 ladder? Well, the American part seems to be pretty significant. Even though he'd be an AlphaTauri driver, Red Bull is believed to view Herta as a great asset for the United States market. Red Bull Racing's title sponsor Oracle is from the US, and F1 is enjoying a lot of fan and commercial interest in the States. California-born Herta, a driver with a lot of flair and just 22 years old, is someone Red Bull could use to maximise that interest. But there are also competitive considerations, and Herta has plenty of merit on the sporting side too, whereas Red Bull's legion of juniors in Formula 2 have failed to stake a serious claim. Herta is an IndyCar frontrunner and arguably the best American prospect of his generation. At his peak, he is phenomenally impressive. His victory in the rain-hit Indianapolis road course race earlier this season came after an inspired performance, in which a brilliant outlap on slick tyres on a damp track vaulted him from the midfield into the lead. But Herta's peaks have rarely been the problem. He's still rough around the edges, as evidenced by the mistakes that have ranged from small errors that cost him a better result to crashing out of victory contention more than once, even this year. That's a big part of why he's only 8th in the 2022 championship standings. The other significant factor there being his Andretti team is not as strong as the likes of Penske, Ganassi and McLaren. Herta has a gung-ho approach that's consistent with the nickname current McLaren F1 star Lando Norris said he earned way back at the start of his career when the pair were racing in Britain's Formula 4 series. Norris called him hooligan Herta, which came from Herta's bravery in high-speed corners that would occasionally lead to mistakes. Norris's comments were made affectionately, but they were honest remarks, and it's not ideal that a characteristic Herta had 7 years ago is still apparent now. A more considered and controlled approach will be vital if Herta is to grasp an F1 chance, but Red Bull has always been attracted by raw performance and rarely been daunted by the prospect of refining a rough diamond. F1 teams haven't looked to the US single-seater scene for a new signing since Sebastian Bourdais came across from Champ Car for the 2008 season. That was also a Red Bull move, bringing Bourdais into Toro Rosso to partner Sebastian Vettel. In fact, most Maverick driver choices in recent memory are down to Red Bull, and Herta might just be the most intriguing choice since Red Bull gave Max Verstappen a Toro Rosso drive for 2015. Verstappen's case was unique. Red Bull signed him up to its junior program in late-ish 2014 with a promise of an F1 drive the following season. Verstappen had entered single-seaters straight at European Formula 3 level and didn't even have a road driving licence when he made his F1 debut at 17. Signing Verstappen was so controversial that the FIA changed the rules to stop it from happening again, with the super licence points system implemented in the wake of the Verstappen case, the very hurdle that Red Bull has to overcome to recruit Herta now. Obviously, we're not suggesting Herta and Verstappen are direct parallels, but like Verstappen, Herta does represent a pick from left field. Look at the list of F1 rookies since the start of 2016, and you can see precious few unlikely signings. The only driver that's remotely as curious a pick as Herta is Brendan Hartley, who Red Bull plucked from Porsche's LMP1 program in the World Endurance Championship. That was driven by circumstances that forced Red Bull's hand, as a self-inflicted driver shortage forced the company to rehire its own ex-junior to place in Toro Rosso. Away from Hartley, Esteban Ocon and Pascal Wehrlein were placed in the DTM by Mercedes before getting into Formula 1. but they had extensive experience in conventional European junior categories prior to their time in the touring car series, as did Hartley before switching to sports cars, although it had been a lot longer since he'd last raced a single-seater. Herta is an unconventional choice for Red Bull, as Verstappen was back in 2015, but he's not a ridiculous one. Verstappen quickly proved that a driver's route to F1 doesn't matter as long as they have the talent. Herta is in the same mould, even if his impact on track might not be quite so spectacular. There are a few deals that need to be finalised before Herta's move can happen. Some stuff on Herta's side is fairly straightforward. He's on a long-term deal with Andretti Autosport in IndyCar and would be at the front of the queue to drive for the team if Michael Andretti gets the 2024 F1 entry he's chasing. But that's looking less and less likely, and in the meantime Herta's believed to have a release clause should an F1 team come calling, which Red Bull now has. In addition to Andretti, McLaren needs to let Herta go too. It signed Herta to a multi-year F1 contract earlier in 2022, but this was only ever likely to be a testing arrangement. McLaren Racing CEO Zak Brown has indicated his company will not stand in Herta's way, so this probably just means Red Bull paying McLaren some compensation. Then there's the deal that needs to be done to create a vacancy for Herta to fill in the first place. Alpine has discussed the release of Gasly from his Red Bull contract, which Red Bull is willing to accept for a fee. The terms of this are believed to be agreed. There are some noises from the Alpine camp that the team has not 100% settled on Gasly as the desired choice, but the likelihood of it being someone else is pretty low. Where it gets more interesting is that Red Bull's attempts to sign Herta also depend on the FIA granting him an F1 super license. Herta needs 40 super license points to do that, but qualifies for only 32 based on his IndyCar Championship finishes from 2019 to 2021, and he's unlikely to improve on that this year. There's nothing in the rules that allow the FIA to just unilaterally ignore the point system, nor has the FIA or Formula 1 expressed a desire to do that. But the regulations do allow a super license to be granted to a driver who has scored a minimum of 30 points, but based on the sole determination of the FIA, were unable to qualify due to circumstances outside their control or reasons of force majeure. So Herta needs the FIA to count his 2018 Indy Light season, which didn't have enough entries to award the full percentage of points it's eligible for. But low grid numbers might not be enough to be worthy of dispensation, and Red Bull Motorsport advisor Helmut Marko says that Red Bull is still waiting for a definite answer. He claimed the decision will be made by the time of this weekend's Italian Grand Prix. If Herta does get special dispensation, it would seem the right outcome, although some will see it as for the wrong reasons, given the general consensus that not having enough entries shouldn't count as force majeure. But Herta could become an important exception. The fact a 7-time IndyCar race winner who has finished as high as third in the standings is scrambling to qualify for a super license shows that the point system has flaws. Super license points are currently awarded to the top 10 finishers in the IndyCar standings, with 40 points for the champion but a steep drop off down to 1 for 10th. It means you could finish 5th in a series as competitive as IndyCar 3 years in a row and still not accrue as many super license points as you could by winning a championship like Formula Regional European, which is a well-contested but low-level series between F4 and F3. There's an established system to get to F1 to guide would-be Grand Prix drivers through Formula 4, Formula 3 and Formula 2. The last 14 F1 rookies raced in F2 or its predecessor GP2 before coming into Formula 1, and there are obvious merits to that pyramid. But Herta is an example of the kind of driver who exists outside it and can force their way onto an F1 team's radar. Whether Herta gets onto the 2023 grid or not, his situation should prompt tweaks to the rules, to ensure drivers of his pedigree don't face such hurdles in the future.